Hi guys! Today we are going to start with the first topic of the course, Determinants of Culture. This topic is more on introduction of the course, which we mainly discuss the concept of culture itself. There are two learning objectives, which I hope that by the end of this topic, you can understand first the facets of culture, which we will learn about the definition of the word culture, three layers of culture, and also comparison in value system of societies. Second, we will learn about the six level of cultures. Hence, without further ado, let us start with the first learning objective, facets of culture. So, actually, what do we understand what culture is and what culture is not? Basically, culture has various definitions, which is hard to explain in exact for what is culture. But in general, culture is a code of attitudes, norms and values which contribute to the way of thinking. Please bear in mind that we are not born with the culture that we have now. We actually learn from it as the basis of socialization process in childhood until now. Thus, we can say that culture determines how we see ourselves because we always belong to a group of people with the same or similar culture and how we see the world. Examples: the Chinese see number 4 differently than the Malays and Indians, whereas Malays see green color differently than Chinese and Indian. Finally, culture is to be seen as relative, which means that no cultural group is better in absolute sense. There is no cultural standard whereby one group perception of the world is intrinsically superior to another's. Simply said, we can't say how we see the world is correct or better than how other cultures see the world. Remember, culture is relative. All culture is unique and we should embrace the uniqueness. After the definition of culture, we now are discussing about the three layers of culture. The first is the outer layer, which can be seen, heard or observed by our sense easily because it is the behavioral or explicit level. You can see from this image that the iceberg, which the outer layer can be seen by our eyes. For example, it is what you notice immediately when you go to a new place for the first time, such as the language used, the food, the architecture, buildings, so on and so forth. The second layer is below the first layer, which contains norm and values. Every culture has its own value system, which form the national characteristic of a culture and act as a framework of references. There are distinctions between norms and values. Norms are the rules of society that determine what is good or bad with regard of behavior. We always have been taught with the ideas of what we should always do and what we should never do. It delineates do and don'ts. You should not shake your leg while sitting. You should not eat with your left hand. You should wait for the elder to eat first. You should not talk with food in your mouth. There are many more examples which basically guiding our daily life. For values are what is considered as important and unimportant. For example, we value our family. We value our neighbor. That is the culture that we have in Malaysia. The third layer is the innermost layer, which lies at the core of culture and contains its assumptions and beliefs. These are difficult to explain and describe. When you are asked to justify why you do this or do that, the answer is often I don't know. Why? For example, Do people eat with a knife and fork or with chopstick? The answer will be ambiguous, such as, that's the way people eat. This layer of culture is deeply embedded. Hence, we always unconsciously behave in certain ways, and it is part of our belief and assumption. Sometimes there are no logic behind it. Now, we compare briefly the value system of countries in terms of the way in which norms and values have developed in a society. There are four categories as shown in this slide. First category is traditional society, in which religion plays an important role. This society emphasizes on collectivism rather than individualism. This is, for example, the case in many Arab countries. Second category is rational society, in which the interests of the individual come first. So, actions such as birth control is encouraged because it will protect individual interests, and the authority of the state is recognized to protect the individual interests. Germany is a typical example for rational society. Third category is where a society in which materialism is predominant. This is often the situation in ex-communist countries. Hence, materialism in terms of wealth and power are highly important and sought after. Last category is postmodern society, such as those countries in Scandinavia and the Netherlands, which those countries emphasize on tolerant and democratic value system in their way of life. Now, we are going to discuss the second learning objective in this topic, levels of culture. A culture starts developing in a context where a group of people have a shared experience, such as members of a family, for example, share a life together and develop a certain togetherness through undergoing experience inside and outside at home. In a business context, culture can develop at different levels within a department or at the various ranks of hierarchy. A company or organization can develop its own culture too. Here we have 6 levels in which cultures can be developed. When cross-cultural matters are under discussion, the term culture and nation should be carefully differentiated. Culture refers to a set of values, beliefs, rules, and institutions held by a specific group of people, whereas nation refers to a community or race of people with shared tradition, history, or languages. For example, the UK consists of 4 nations: English, Scots, Irish, and Welsh, which each of these nations with a distinctive cultural identity, even they are living in the same country. National culture is what differentiates the culture of one country with other countries. This national culture may be heterogeneous in nature, but it will contain enough dominant elements which together enable a national culture to be created. For example, Malaysia has multicultural population, yet they have one national culture. That is, the Malaysian national culture represents the multicultural population of the country. Now we have a look at the 3 different levels of culture which mainly exhibited in the company or firm level. Organizational culture refers to the cultural elements in which affect the way strategy is determined, goals are established, and how organization operates. We can say that organizational culture is the acceptance in a tacit or formal way of norms of specific behavior by the members of an organization. The term corporate culture takes the questions of organizational culture a step further. Corporate culture is developed based on national culture and organizational culture. For example, the culture at headquarters may influence that of subsidiaries abroad. Hence, the subsidiaries develop a distinct corporate culture which stem from their own national culture in where the subsidiaries base and the headquarters organizational culture. The nature of the line of business the company is in may have an important influence in the professional culture attached to the key position within the organization. Professional culture is essentially to do with the set of values shared by people working together professionally. There are three professional cultures in management. First, there are the operators who are directly involved in production of goods or services. Second, there are the engineers, the people who design and monitor the technology behind the production of goods and services. Third, there are the executive, which refer to the senior manager, who will be monitoring the engineers and operators as well as the overall company strategy. Here we have a simple example to show how different countries have different culture in terms of average working hours. This will serve as a basis for the American multinational enterprise to set their common organizational working hours, and this organizational culture will influence of its subsidiaries in other countries, let's say in China, the UK and Germany. The subsidiaries will have to develop their corporate culture to find the balance between their own national culture and headquarters organizational culture. There is no one culture fits all situation when we talk about cross-cultural management. So, at the basis of all the culture mentioned lies the individual culture, the personal culture. It is individuals who ultimately form the culture of an organization. The values they embody as members of an organization are formed partially through the family, social and national environment, and partially through the professional, corporate and organizational culture. It is up to the management to take into account the diversity of people in an organization and to manage their cultural differences. In an international context, so what does cross-cultural management means? It explains the behavior of people in organizations around the world. It also describes and compares organizational behavior across countries and culture. And also it seeks to understand and improve the interaction of co-workers, managers, executive, clients, supplier, and alliance partners. So that's all for this topic. Thank you and see you in the next topic. Bye.